In this episode, I am going to tell you about two things which will never appear in my book. They will not appear in my book because I intend my book to talk about. I intend my book to start at the time when I joined the police services and when I left the police service. So these are things that happened before I joined the police service, but they are very dear to me, and I want to share with you. One, I want to share with you why or how I repeated one class. I only repeated in standard 3. I just went through from standard 1 to form 6 without, it is only in standard 3 that I repeated. So I want to tell you the circumstances that led for me to repeat standard 3. I also want to say that I've been to, I think, 7 primary schools. For the 8 years I was in primary, I went to 7 different schools. Some of them, I think there are even 2 schools, if I'm not wrong, which I used to go for one term only. One term. I go to a school for one term and be transferred. The circumstances of it being there, I think I'll explain. That is, I want to talk about why I repeated once and in standard 3. And apart from talking on why I repeated in standard 3, and I will also be saying the 7 or so schools that I went to in primary. And then second thing and final, I want to tell you about it. There's a time I reported to school in one term. I reported to school uh, less than 10 days, less than 10 days in one term, and I became number 4 in that school. It is Mbagathi Road Primary School, but I'll come to that. First of all, let me count the schools I went to, primary, all of them. In standard 1, 1968, I went to a school called Ziwani Primary School. Ziwani Primary School, there are 2 schools which are facing each other. They are both called Ziwani Primary School, but the other one is called Ziwani Primary School for the Deaf. So there was a time I went to Mombasa and I was at Ziwani Primary School for the Deaf, and I went to the office and told the teachers, the head teacher, that I'm a former student here. He said, no. I said, but you don't know me and whatever. That is when he told me, by the fact that you are talking, you have never been to this school. I said, but I've always known that I was at Ziwani Primary School. Then he showed me a neighboring school. He said, this is the Ziwani Primary School for the deaf, and the other one is Ziwani Primary School for the normal people. So you must have been to that school. That is Ziwani Primary School at a place called Pakistan, or some people call it Pakistan, is where I went for my 1968 first term and second term. My father was transferred to Nakuru, where we stayed not very far from Everready. Actually, if you look at among my very first videos on this channel, I showed people where we were passing with a vehicle, and I said we used to stay somewhere near here. That is where we were in 1968, third term, standard 1. I only went to Nakuru West Primary School for one term. God willing, I'll visit that school because I've already visited Ziwani Primary School. I intend to visit Nakuru West Primary School. From there, we were my father took us home, took us home. Standard 2, term 1. Remember, standard 1, term 3, I went to one school called Nakuru West Primary School. Standard 2, term 1, I went to a school called Matete Primary School. I went to a school called Matete Primary School. Today, if you are to go to Matete, you'll be confused. You'll be taken to another school called Matete Primary School. The Matete Primary School that I went through nowadays is called St. Mukasa Secondary. It has a primary wing. I don't know whether the primary wing still calls itself St. Mukasa. But you know, the black spot between Chimoi and Kaburengu. At that black spot, there is a primary and a secondary school. The second school is called St. Mukasa. That is the school I went to. Later on, a primary school was built near Matete. Nowadays is town. Another primary school was built next to Matete Market. So that new primary school was given the name Matete, and this one had to give up the name. For those of you who are in Riruta satellite, may have noticed that we have if you find somebody who's 70 years and over, he or she will tell you that he or she went to Riruta Primary School. Now, if you go to Riruta today and ask to be taken to Riruta Primary School, you will be taken to Riruta Satellite Primary School. Riruta Satellite Primary School, Riruta Satellite Primary School came there in 1972. So when it came up in 1972, and it was nearer Riruta than the Riruta Primary School, the Riruta Primary School was renamed Riruta HGM. So as we speak now, we have two primary schools called Riruta Primary School. But one is called Riruta Satellite Primary School, and the other one is called Riruta HGM Primary School. So if you ask a lot of people, I want to go to Riruta Primary School, they'll take you to Riruta Satellite Primary School. But the original Riruta Primary School is what today is called HGM. What does HGM stand for? HGM stands for Holy Ghost Mission. It is run by the Catholic Church. So HGM is Holy Ghost Mission. So back to Matete Primary School. I said that nowadays it is not called Matete Primary School. There is another school called Matete Primary School. I said standard 1, term 1 and 2, Ziwani Primary, term 3, what do you call, term 3, Nakuru West Primary School. Standard 2, term 1, let me use the new name, St. Mukasa, Chimoi. I only learned there for one term. So you find that in standard 1, third term, I was in a school called Nakuru West. And standard 2, term 1, I was in standard 2, term 1, I was in Chimoi, St. Mukasa, which was then called Matete. So two schools, each one going for a term each. From Matete Primary School, which today is called St. Mukasa, my father was transferred to Kajiado. So I went to Kajiado, a school that today is still called Township Primary School. Township Primary School, I went to Standard 2, 1969, Term 2 and Term 3. Term 2 and Term 3. But believe it or not, it was in Standard 2 that I went to my nursery school. I usually tell people that I went to nursery school when I was in Standard 2. They start doubting whether I had visited Bunyore or Kisiland. This is how it was. When I was to go to nursery, there was this system of holding your hand over the head to touch the other ear. I could not do it. So I was told to go to nursery. That was when I was joining standard 1, to go to nursery until the following year. But then my father went to school in police uniform. So I was admitted in standard 1. I never went to nursery at that level. But in Masai Land, I don't know whether other places, I noticed that in Masai Land, and it also affected Nkaisere, Major General Nkaisere, who was a cabinet minister. In Masai Land, standard 1 used to go to school in the morning. Standard 2 would go in the afternoon and use the same class in day schools, because I went to another primary school in Kajiado, which was a boarding school, and that thing didn't happen. But in Masai Land, day schools in the 60s, standard 1 and 2 used to use the same classroom. So standard 1 would be there in the morning, standard 2 would come in the afternoon, use the same facilities as standard 1 had used in the morning. So I was in Township Primary in Kajiado Town in standard 2, term 2 and term 3. And those days, nursery school kids used to go to school up to 11 a.m. So when my stepbrother Peter and my follower Lillian would go to school in the morning, as they woke up when they went to school, I would go to a nearby nursery school. I'd go to a nearby nursery school. Now, those nursery schools those days were different from primary schools these days. Nowadays, from 80s, it is impossible to have a stand-alone nursery school. But during the 60s, we used to have nursery schools in churches, nursery schools in social halls, and so on. For anybody who knows Bagathi Road Primary School, near Bagathi Hospital, you will see that there is a hall that is called Anderson Hall. Anderson Hall. Now, those people, that was the nursery school that used to feed Bagathi Road Primary School. So during our time, nursery schools were in social halls and churches, not in primary schools. Primary schools used to just take care of standard 1 to standard 7. So next to our house was near the county police headquarters. And the county police headquarters is somewhere near, between the district hospital, the county hospital, and Masai store. So when my stepbrother Peter and my follower Lydian would go to school in the morning, because Peter was in standard 3 and my sister was in standard 1. So when my mother would prepare them for classes, I would wake up and I would go to the nursery school, which was boundary our house. There was a social hall there. I would go there. So when I went there, I would go there, dance, take porridge, sing and whatever with those kids up to 11 a.m. We would then be told to go home. I would go home, change into primary school uniform, and then go to Township Primary School. So in my second term and third term in primary, I was in Township Primary School and I was also in nursery school. Upon completion of Standard 2, 1969, my father was transferred to Wajir as the county police commander. So that one necessitated us, the three of us, to go to boarding schools. My sister went to AIC Girls Primary School. Me and my stepbrother Peter went to, it was then called PBS. Then it used to be called PBS. And actually people who stay around will tell you they still call it PBS. Primary Boarding School. Primary Boarding School. Now this school has changed its name twice. Today it is called Boys Boarding Primary School, BBPS. BBPS. That is what it's called today. But those days used to be called PBS, Primary Boarding School. But now it's called Boys Boarding Primary School, Kajiado. That is where I went for Standard 3. Standard 3, 2 classes, 2 years. That is 1970, Standard 3, 1971, Standard 3. I repeated Standard 3 there. And then 1972, Standard 4, Term 1 and 2. Then from there, Term 3, I went to a school called DEB, District Education Board, Luandeti, third term. Standard 5, in 1973, the first few days, I can even say the first month, the January days, I think 3 weeks, I went to Luandeti DEB Primary School. Then from February 1973, Standard 5, up to when I completed my Standard 7. That is 73 Standard 5, 74 Standard 6, and 75 Standard 7. I was at Mbagathi Road Primary School. From Mbagathi, my secondary education, I went to Nairobi Technical, which has been promoted. Now it's called Nairobi National Polytechnic. That is where I went for Form 1 to Form 4. I could not go for Form 5 in the same school because of the CBC. They are talking of pathways. Yeah, CBC they are calling pathways. My pathway was humanities, which we used to call arts. So I had to go to Bungoma Boys. Anyway, I was supposed to go to Upper Hill for Mr. Igobwa, but Mr. Naswa insisted that I go to Bungoma High School. That is a story for another day. Now back to, if you have counted, I went to 7 primary schools in the 7 classes I was in the 8 years I was in primary. Ziwani Primary School in Mombasa, Nakuru West, Nakuru, Matete Primary School, which was renamed. From Matete, I went to Township. From Township, I went to PBS. From PBS, I went to DEB. From DEB, I went to Mbagathi. 7 primary schools. Now, I want to tell you why I repeated. In Standard 3. I'll go back to Standard 2. Standard 2 at Kajiado, I developed a funny sickness. Nobody ever told me what that sickness was until much, much later. I remember when I was still at a township primary, there was a time I used to go to Kajiado District Hospital, which today is called Kajiado Referral Hospital. I used to be given so many drugs, medicine. I remember they were yellow, round pills, and I used to take them daily. After maybe 2 months, I clear them. Imagine taking those drugs, 6 of them per day. I remember when I was that sick, I used to go for injection. Uh, there's a time even I had to go for 60 days. Now you remember I was in Standard 2. So in the morning, I would sometimes not even go for that nursery school, and I would go there, or I would go to the hospital, get the injection, come back, then go to the nursery school. Then in the afternoon, I would go to Standard 2. My mother, let her rest in peace. There is only the number of times she has beaten me, thorough beating, cannot even reach 5. I don't know whether my kids can say that. Uh, one of the 5 times or so that she beat me up thorough is one day she found me with a red biro, and I had my hospital card. When she noticed that, she really beat me up. She said, "That is the trick you're using. You go to the hospital, they stamp the date, and then you mark as if you have been injected. Too late." I had not done that, but I had learned there. It was serious because those days, it is just like today. TB in 1969 was similar to HIV today. You miss taking your drugs, uh, you're going to panic mode. So in those days, if you had TB, as I had, and you missed taking drugs or you missed an injection, you'd start all over again. That is one of the times when my mother beat me. I never knew what sickness I was suffering, but I knew there were occasions I would be given 30 injections. Each day I go there for the whole month. No holiday, no weekend, no nothing. I also remember being given so many circular tablets, like yellow, like this shirt I'm wearing. But nobody ever told me what I was suffering from. I remember even one time I had to be taken to Machakos Provincial General Hospital. In the 60s, the provincial headquarters for Eastern Province was in Machakos. The provincial general hospital for Eastern Province was in Machakos. That was before they were taken to Embu. So one time I was taken, I was given a driver, Land Rover, the hospital Land Rover with a driver, and I remember my mother giving me 5 shillings, 5 shilling note, which she said it was needed for my food when we were going to Machakos. We left with that driver. The driver took me to the hospital. We lined up just like anybody else. We lined up, went for the X-ray. We were given the X-ray in an envelope. The driver didn't allow me to touch it. From there, the driver took me to a hotel. And when I produced the 5 shillings that we eat in the hotel, he refused. He took out 10 shillings and bought food. I was later to learn that the hospital is the one which had given him the money, knowing that I was their patient. If you are their patient, when it comes to lunchtime, the hospital is supposed to feed you. But since I was an inpatient, I was an outpatient in Kajiado and an outpatient in the provincial general hospital in Chacos, the driver had been given money for food for both of us. We went back. He, the driver gave the driver then gave the uh, the, the, the X-ray negative to my mother, inside the envelope, so that we took there. I studied in Kajiado. I studied in Kajiado Township for 2 terms, then joined uh, what do you call PBS, Primary Boarding School in Kajiado, Standard 3, Term 1, 2, and 3. Standard 3, 6 terms, and Standard 4, 2 terms. So a total of 8 terms. One time, while I was at Kajiado Primary Boarding School, there was a cinema in Kajiado opposite the post office. We sneaked and went for the cinema. The prefects went to our dormitories, checked for those people who were not on their beds, wrote their names. Then the following day we were going to be whipped before the whole school. That was Standard 3 repeat, not the first year, the second year. When people are going to be whipped, it reached my turn. I was told to lie down. Then the headmaster, Mr. Olesegendo, said that he cannot beat me because I was suffering from TB. That is the first time I knew that I had it, that all the years I've been suffering from TB. I've seen on TV kids who were born with HIV, and these kids, they say that they grew up taking a lot of drugs, without even knowing how it is, and they were used to that. I I can remember myself also in primary. Nobody ever told me what I was suffering from. No, I just used to get a lot of injection, and I used to get a lot of drugs, yellowish like the shirt I'm putting on, without any. It is that day that we sneaked to go to attend a movie, that everybody who had sneaked was beaten. But me, Olesegendo said, "How can I beat you, and you are suffering from TB?" That is when I knew that I had TB. Uh, I think I have to chip in a story here. I've never smoked in my life because when I grew up and reached Form 2, where people used to smoke, there used to be say that TB and smoking was not compatible. And then when I was in my Form 6, there are some boys who used to smoke bang from Bunyore, and I used to want to go and start smoking bang with them when I was in higher up there. I think Form 5, and I wanted to smoke bang with them because since my childhood, had never tasted alcohol. I'll never tasted cigarette because of my TB background. One day, when they were talking, two things stopped me from taking bang. One day they prepared githeri with waru and anything, and poured sugar there, and they just ate it very sweetly. I tasted 2 to 3. It was funny. A githeri, instead of salt, it had sugar. That one thing made me. I've never smoked bang because of that. And also, they were talking of, someone was saying that he used to smoke bang, but haikuwa inaingia. Then he said, but when I started mixing it with cigarette, ikaingia. Then I saw, cigarette. Yeah. So the two instances of sugar in githeri, and also saying that if you want a good aire, if you want to feel aire, you have to smoke bang mixed with cigarette. Those are the two things that made me never. You see, I've always grown up knowing that I should not smoke because of TB. Now I'm being told that to smoke, to get aire in bang, you have to mix with cigarette. So that is how I said I'll go back again to primary 3, repeat. When I was supposed to be beaten, strokes, and then the teacher said, how can I beat you who is suffering, seriously suffering with TB? So that is when I knew. And I can tell you, I'm a living example of what the ministry says, TB inatiba, TB inatiba. I got completely cured because after my school, imagine I had to undergo Kiganjo and GS. I had to undergo Kiganjo recruit course, and I had to undergo GSU recruit course combined. For someone with the TB, that is impossible. Of course, during my recruitment, they tested me for TB. It was not there. I want to say that the reason why I repeated standard 3, I told you that I used to go to hospital regularly. Yes, there are even occasions when I would go to hospital, be admitted in Kajiado, now we called Kajiado Referral Hospital. And I would also, Kajiado would be unable to treat me, and I would be taken to Aga Khan Hospital in Parklands, Nairobi. So there's a time I spent time in Aga Khan Hospital. From Aga Khan, I went to Kajiado District Hospital, spent the whole term. Imagine going to school the first term, then you have the whole term you spent in Aga Khan Hospital, Parklands, and also you spent time in Kajiado District Hospital, which today is called Kajiado Referral Hospital. You spent time there. And then when people are doing exams, when we are released. But funny thing is, whenever I would be admitted in Aga Khan Hospital in Parklands, I would not even spend a week there. I would get cured. But when I went to Kajiado, I would spend the whole term in ward. So this is what people say, that people have ugonjwa ya. There are some towns which your health does not agree with. you find yourself whenever you're in that town, you become sick. I think that one applied in Kajiado. So Kajiado Standard 3 third term, I come from home quite healthy. After a week or so in school, I'm admitted in Kajiado District Hospital. When I was admitted in Kajiado District Hospital, I stay in the hospital for the whole term. Yes, you heard me, the whole term. When I went back to school, they had started doing the exams. That one is standard 3, third term, the first year. Uh, when I asked people what they have done, they told me we have done ABCD, ABCD. I remember being told we have done maths paper 1. That is the first time I was hearing of something like maths paper 1, and we are waiting for maths paper 2. So when the other papers came, I did them. When I did them, remember, the whole term I was in the hospital. And even after coming out of the hospital, I did not do all the exams. I found them halfway. I did those exams. I think that is one of the mistakes I did in the world, because later on teachers told me that from the hospital I should not have done the exam. I should not have done any paper. But the few papers I did, those years, those years, uh, we used to have a system where the last quarter, for example, a class has 20 students. I know today's students will be shocked to hear that we used to have a classroom of 20 students. If the class has 20 students, number 16 to 20, number 16, the last four, is it the last five, would not go to the next class. They must repeat. If they are 40 in class, which was impossible those days, then number 31 to 40 would repeat. So it was a government policy that anybody who was in the last quarter would repeat, and I was among the last quarter, so I had to repeat. That is why in the 80s and 90s, the government came up with a policy stating that for someone to repeat, there has to be consultations in 3 ways. The student who is to repeat has to be consulted, the parent or guardian has to be consulted, and lastly, the teachers have to be consulted. Otherwise, the student will continue. But during our time, you are in the last quarter, you have to repeat. So that is why I repeated. When I repeated standard 3, I continued the classwork. I was okay. I was above average, if I can remember. I can't remember very well, but if I remember, I was among the just after the third. The class of 20, I was around number 8 to 10. 8 to 10, class of 20. And it is somebody who used to spend most of his time going to the hospital. If you know where AIC Girls is, if you know where Olkejuado High School is, walking all the day for a standard 3 kid to the hospital for regularly, and then coming whatever and being number 8, 9, or even 10 out of 20, that's a trial. It reached a time when I was informed, not from, but standard 4, I think second or third term, it was second term, when the school wrote to my father in Wajir and said that enough is enough. The kid should be, they had discovered that whenever I went to any other town, I would be fine. But when I'm in Kajiado, I would be sick. So they told my father in a certain time that I should not study in Kajiado. So my father was still in Wajir as the county police boss. So I was transferred to Kajiado DEB. Kajiado DEB. I went to Kajiado DEB Standard 4, 1972. 1972, Standard 4, third term. I remember going to class. I asked the kids who was number 1. They showed me a certain girl. She was number 1. I told her, this time you are going to be number 2. I said that in class. That term I was number 4. That term I was number 4. And the reason why I was number 4 was because of two subjects. They did a subject which was called agriculture. Agriculture, you'd come with a jembe, you'd unalima, unapalilia shamba ya shule. And that subject, I can tell you, I was number last. Another subject that I was number last was to do with arts and craft or something like that. They call home craft or something like that. I was also number last. If those two subjects, I would have performed better. If those two subjects were not there, I think I would have been number 1. That was 1972, third term, standard 4. 1973, I went to the same school for a few days, if not a week. Because I remember in February, I was already in Bagathi Road Primary School. By then, my father had been transferred to Nairobi, and then I went to Bagathi Road Primary School. Telling you the truth, my father was one of the harshest parents ever. It was very harsh. So I joined the Bagathi Road Primary School with my brother, kid brother. I was in standard 5, and my brother was in standard 1. Dad bought us these ties, if you know the ties that are used by kids, which are, the tie is okay, but it is plastic. Uh, it has it has a bladder round. So we had that. There's a time I lost that tie. There's something that I can't explain even today. I had that tie. It got lost. I was in standard 5, so I wanted another tie, but my father, being harsh as he was, I would not tell him the tie was lost. So I told him I have not. I mean, they have said that upper primary will have this tie that you tie normally. Lower primary can use the bladder, but upper primary can use that. Then my father gave me 40 shillings. I went to Ludhuli Avenue, bought a tie. Within a week, it was lost. So I went to those people who are grown up in Mudhurwa, those people who know boxing. There is a senior sergeant who coached boxing called Wamze. I went to Wamze, told him, I've lost the tie that my father bought me. He bought me another. It got lost. So within a fortnight, I had lost 3 ties. I can never explain that. I can only explain it in Luhya language, where it says somebody must have picked my hair or something and whatever. So 3 ties gone. I could not tell my father I have no tie. I used to go or leave home. This is now the second story. I've told you about why I repeated. Now I want to tell you of the school term that I attended less than 10 days, but I was number 4. Yes, number 4. In my school life, I've never been number 1, 2, 3, but there are very many times I was number 4. So what happened was I would leave home, Madaraka Estate, go as if I'm going to school, then end up in Kenyatta Estate. I stayed for a very long time without going to school. That one day, there was a teacher who was called Mrs. Washira. She was very harsh. That is standard 6. She was very harsh. And if you didn't have a tie, she would just tell you, go home. So one day she asked if I had transferred to another school or something like that. Then she was told that my father was very harsh, and I was afraid of telling my father that I lost the tie. She said, anybody finding him, tell him to come back home. I mean, to come back to school. So one time I met Tico, somebody called Tico. I hear he's dead. One day I called Tico, who was the class prefect. One day, it was lunchtime. I was going home. He said, "Oh, this is the school you usually go. Hmm? You have put on uniform. You don't go to school." But then he told me, Mrs. Washira said, "You start going back to school tomorrow." Let me stop there, and then come with another version. That time my mother was sick. That time when I used to sneak out of school, my mother was sick, and she was admitted at Park Road Nursing Home. So one time I went to visit her over the weekend. she told me that education is very important, and I hear you don't go to school. I saw her, I saw to her that I usually go to school like ya Mungu sijui nini nini. She told, and she was weak and sickly. I said, no, start going to school. Then I went back and started this sneaking. There is one day, there is now the day that I got our class monitor, class prefect, Tico. Tico told me that Mrs. Washira, our class teacher, said you come back. So the following day I had to go to school. The following day, I remember Madaraka Day when I was going to school, something told me to turn back. And as I was going to school, I turned back and looked at my parents' bedroom, and I saw my father observing me. Just something tells you, you feel like scratching the back of your head. You turn back and see our house was on the top floor, third floor, and my father was just standing there at the watching me. I looked at him, pretended everything was okay, then I went to school. That day, break time, my father was in school. Now, when he was looking at me, I can now think and know that he was saying in his mind, now he's pretending to go to school. I'll go to school and be there and see if he'll reach me, if I'll see him. So when I went to school in the morning, during break time, I was called to the office. I was told, you are needed in the office. I went to the office. The head teacher was called. Both the head teacher and the deputy teacher were both called Moreithi. The head teacher was called Moses Moreithi. The deputy, I can't recall his Christian name. They were there. And my father was there. So I was being asked, have you been coming to school? I said, yes. And you see, I was afraid of my father. I could not say before anybody that I never went to school. The deputy got worked up. I remember the deputy used to put on glasses. The deputy got worked up and told me, you know, you are cheating. I said, I'm not cheating. He said, you know, I can pick up this stick and beat you in the presence of your father. So I kept quiet. Then they told me, go back to school, to class. I went back to class. That day going home was a hard problem because my father would my father would murder somebody for a small crime. Now this was a very big crime. So I could not. And by the way, this is one of the reasons why we have chokoras. Because if there is any day I would have become a chokora, that was the day I was to become a chokora. Because I knew that there were very few mistakes I would do, and my father would really beat me up. Not only me, any of his children, except for his favorite. His favorite. He occasionally would beat her. He actually even jailed her. Even jailed her. But she was his favorite. She was his favorite. Uh, there were reasons he would find out. If you find that he beat her, but we are not talking about her, we are talking about me. So that day I knew that I was to be beaten with her. And I don't know why an idea of being a chokora didn't come to me. If it would, I would have come, I would have beaten her. What I later came to know, much, much later, was that after the head teacher and deputy head teacher told me to go to class, my class teacher, Mrs. Washira, was called. And she said that I had lost my tie, and I had lost my tie, and I missed school for so many days, and I'd missed school for so many days. And when she asked whether I've been transferred or anything, they told her, no, I usually leave home, pretend to be going to school. I would pretend to be going to school, but I was not going to school. And the whole class had said, Babake Nikali. Him telling his father that he had lost a tie. And then she said how she had sent out people to tell me to come, not to be scared. And I think they talked to my father. That is when my father came in the evening. And boy, hey, can't recall that one. I was so shaking, and I must have been telling Jesus to wait for me because that day I knew I would be killed. My father told me, sit down. The first thing I noticed that my father did not have belts, walking sticks, and what. He didn't have that. And you see, I told you that my mother beat me a total of 5 times. That time I did not take drugs. There's another time in Kajiado, I went to church. My mother gave me 1 shilling to go to take to church, and I changed the money into coins, 10 cents each. Gave the money, gave out 10 cents, remained with 90 cents. So my mother saw me buying, eating, and what. It was, where did you take them? Where did you get the money? I said, hey, Mom, I got an idea. That 1 shilling I failed. Let me take a. That is one of the 5 times I was really beaten for stealing God's money. So, but the 5 or so times my mother beat me up, I remember is should be very nice. Hakuna kitu nitakufanyia sijui nini. You enter the house, she locks the. That is when you know. Hmm? Anyway, my mother rest in peace. But my father, you locked your eyes and you knew today you'll you'll see fire. He never pretended. And I said my mother beat me 5 times. My father must have beaten me 50,000 times in total. Uh, so that day, I saw my father changed. The one who used to, you just see him and you know, hey, leo kumewaka. But that day he was very friendly, very whatever. He sat down, told me, sit down. He talked to me. Okay, I must have heard it because I remember what he said. But I was just waiting for him to stop the act and take belts and walking sticks and beat me up. But he told me the importance of education and why I should be educated and so on and so forth. With that, he told me, you can go to sleep. I almost said, hey, am I dreaming? But then I went and slept. That term, I was number 4. That term, I was number 4. I took my report to him. He looked at the report from, it's written, the number of attendance. You are told maybe the attendance is 90 days. And you are, down there, they write the number of schools, it's 90. And how many times have you attended? You have attended the classes 85 times. So you have been absent for 5 times. But to me, 90 days, number of absenteeism is 8. Attending is 10 days for the second time ever. For the second time ever, my father called me. And it was within the same month. Called me and told me, look here, what position were you in? I said, position 4. How many days did you attend? 10 days. Suppose you would have attended all the days. Don't you think you'd be number 1? And then he left. And you know, when he left, you you just find, am I dreaming? You mean, Dad, Lando just talks to me that way and goes, hey, without beating me, without even being harsh on me, just peacefully that way. Anyway, Lando, rest in peace.